Welcome back and happy New Year. 2025 is here, and this is our first Club Director niche content of the year. And one of the things that we've been pushing, my wife and I, on social media over the past 2 weeks is an issue that's near and dear to our hearts that we've been talking about and how we want to try and get something changed within the rules and the structure of youth club volleyball. And that it very specifically relates to having kids on benches. Specifically, we're talking about newborns and younger children for parents who are going through raising children and trying to still coach club volleyball. And the reason why this is something that's close to our heart is obviously because we have children. I was in that same boat when I had newborns. I would wear them on my chest while coaching all the time. And I never really had any issues. I never really got any problems. But we've had a number of situations that's become more common in the past year where we had coaches in our club who had a newborn. We had friends in other clubs who had a newborn and they try and have their baby on the bench with them. And referees were asking them to remove the baby from the bench. And you know how it goes. If you're a newborn mom or a newborn parent, you're not going to just like hand off your child to the sidelines and be like, all right, good luck, right? You then end up having to leave the bench and be with the kid, and then you don't get to do both things, even though you're capable of doing both, specifically when you've got a newborn strapped to your chest. They're just sleeping pretty much the entire time. So what happens is because of the rule, officials who are the upkeepers, the holders, the monitors of the rule are then being forced to act, right? It's their job. They're being told to upforce these rules. So they're telling parents or, these moms or dads that have young kids on the bench that they need to move somewhere else. Now, let's just start with where this began. Like, why is this rule in effect? And then from there, we can move into why it's a problem. Then we can talk about how we can fix it. And then we'll have a little call to action where I need some of your help, actually, of trying to get this thing changed. So let's go ahead and start here. Where did this start? This started for one very specific reason, and it can all be summed up by one word, which is liability. So we are obviously in the United States of America. It is a litigious nation, right? Litigious meaning that people are going to sue people, right? If something happens, they're going to try and get money from you if they break a leg, if they fall, if they slip, if they do this, if they sip the coffee and it's too hot, right? This is just the world that we live in. And so the event organizers, USA Volleyball, AAU on the whole, right, they have their lawyers go through all these things. They are a risk-adverse organization. They don't want to get sued. And so they're trying to put all of these things in place to show that they're trying to protect everyone, which is completely fine. That's exactly what they should be doing. But there are second and third order effects in some of these rules that they may not have understood at the time or seen or being able to foresee what was going to happen. And the reason why this rule in particular creates a dynamic for coaches that's a negative is because it very much skews in not the favor of female coaches, right? So young moms who just had babies, they are most of the time the ones that suffer from this rule because you just had your kid and they're pretty much attached to you already, right? You just had the baby, but they're still pretty much, a part of you for the first, few months of life. And so you want to be able to provide moms specifically and dads, right? Like myself included, I didn't have the issue because I wasn't called out for it, but dads who do have that issue, you want them to be able to still do what they love. You want them to still be able to coach even though they have a baby, right? And so this is one of those things where females, young women that are getting involved in the sport, they get deterred when this type of roadblock gets put in front of them because they don't need to fight this battle or they don't want to fight this battle. And it's not their fault that they don't want to fight this battle. So someone needs to be able to call that out and step into the light and say, hey, this is causing young female coaches, not to coach. And if we want to empower female coaches, we want to empower women to get into this sport. And there's a ton of really high quality female coaches out there. And there's a ton of quality young coaches in the male field as well, right? Where if they're getting affected by this, then like same idea, right? You don't want to deter, you don't want to put the roadblocks in front of coaches where we don't need to. So how do you go about fixing this? How do you go about solving the issue of the liability for USA Volleyball or AAU, but also not putting a roadblock in front of coaches that do want to do this, that do have young kids, but still want to be a part of coaching club volleyball, coaching new sports, and empowering the next generation of athletes that moves forward? Because that's the other degree that you need to think about is when you are a young female athlete going through club volleyball, if you see your coach stop coaching because they had a baby, or you see your coach getting kicked off of the bench because they have a baby, that's sending a message. And that's sending a message that I think we could all see how that would affect them negatively, how that would affect their psyche on what it is to be a coach and what it looks like to be a coach in a negative way. So if we can empower that while also still protecting the liability, I think you can create a win-win situation here for all sides. So let's talk about how we can actually do that. The question I would pose is, how do we, as a club volleyball world, a culture, as coaches, as club directors, fix it? How do we fix this problem? How do we help AAU volleyball and USA volleyball create a solution that doesn't create a hostile dynamic for parents? And the solution that I have is what I would liken to a newborn or a lap child on an airplane, right? When you buy a ticket for an airplane ride and I want to bring my child with me, I'm allowed to have my baby sit on my lap for the first 2 years. After that, I need to buy them a seat on the plane. I can still sit next to them, but I need to buy them an actual ticket. Like, can you imagine if on the left-hand side of the airplane, when you bought a ticket, that's where all of the parents or athletes and coaches got to sit, but on the right-hand side of the plane, that's where all of the spectators or the babies had to sit. And so, like, you need like a random stranger to watch your baby when you get on the airplane. Like, no one would want to do that. Just let the baby be with mom and dad so that no one else has to deal with it because it's their baby and they probably know what's best for them and can keep it the most safe. Like, the left side of the court or the right side of the court, left side of the plane, right side of the plane doesn't really matter. It's like, it's the person they're sitting with that really matters. So, but hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe strangers do want to watch babies. The insurance companies may raise the rate of an AAU or a USA if they need to insure these younger babies or younger kids as well. So if that's the case, okay, maybe we need to pay a little fee in order to add on a membership for basically not a team representative, but a lap child. How do I add on my child that need to be on the bench with me so that I, as the parent, can sign the waiver and the release of liability? So we get rid of that liability piece for the organization, and maybe we're helping cover the cost of what that additional fee may be as well. Right, so we're checking off those boxes, but I'm then allowed to still have my kid on the bench with me if I need, right? And it's not always going to be that for me. Like, my kids rarely sit on the bench when I'm coaching a match. Most of the time I have some form of coverage, but when they were little, I had them on my chest and they didn't cause any harm, right? They're just sleeping there the entire time. So letting me have that opportunity and letting me not get in the way of coaching and still having my little child with me at the same time is super helpful. But when you get a referee that, knows that that's the rule and feels like they're, in some way, shape, or form going to be liable if they don't kick the baby off the bench, you're creating a dynamic where that referee and that coach and that child now have this weird triangle going on where it's hostile, right? Like, you're telling someone they need to leave or they need to stop doing this when all that parent is trying to do is coach and all that referee is trying to do is enforce the rules. So you make it a situation where, hey, you can add that child onto the roster so that the ref knows that they're covered liability-wise and they don't need to enforce that. And the parent knows that, hey, my kid's going to be on here and I'm not going to be harassed. I can still do this job that I love and want to be a part of without, fear of consequence. So if you can able to do that, if you're able to add that on, then that would be super helpful and would go a long way. Now, the current workaround, like what we do for our coaches, is we actually add the baby onto the roster as an athlete. The problem that you run into there is you have a maximum amount of athletes that are allowed on a roster. So if I have a team of 15 athletes, then I can't add the baby onto a roster because we don't have any more spots left. So to allow them to be added on as something other than an athlete, something other than a coach, where you need to be background checked and pass all these tests and different things like that, having some form of a category that's specific for that child, for an under 5 years old or whatever it may be, would be hugely helpful for families, for parents. So you're creating a situation where we're no longer having a blockade or putting up roadblocks in front of them. Now, here's some of the arguments that I have heard on, posting on this on social media. There's a mixed bag of reviews. I think most people are very supportive and want to empower female coaches and parents with young kids to be able to do this if they want to, right? It doesn't mean you have to. Like, I totally understand when someone's like, hey, I got 3 kids under 5 at home. I just don't have time for this and I'm going to prioritize them. So I'm done coaching right now and I'll come back later. Yeah, all good. That's completely fine if that's what you want to do. If it's me, where it's my full-time job, right, I want my kids to be there, that's my choice and I want them to be in that situation. There's an argument that's like, hey, I don't want to pay for club volleyball if all my coach is doing is babysitting their children on the sidelines. understood. I think that's where we, in a capitalistic society, get to vote with our dollars. Parents know what they're getting into, or are going to know what they're getting into with that coach. Coaches' reputations are going to follow them. And if I, as a coach, am just not paying attention and having to like deal with my wild 2-year-old on the sidelines, yeah, that's going to probably be a detriment to our team on the whole. If that's what's happening over and over and over again. Most of the times, I think most parents are pretty aware of the situations around them, of what they need, of what their child needs, of what the team needs. And a lot of times, it creates a really cool environment, actually, where the whole team is kind of doing this together. You'll see the players who, like for me, I'll use myself as an example. Bringing my daughters to practice, my players will go up and give them fist bumps, right? They'll kind of give them high fives before the game. My daughters have their favorite players on my team, their favorite players on my wife's team, and they know them. They send them video messages for their birthdays, and they have these like little relationships that they've built and actually get to be a part of the team. And then likewise, you've got the parents on the sidelines, and sometimes, yeah, parents will watch my daughters during practice. They'll go up and they'll get them a snack from the vending machine. They'll, go up and say hey with them. They'll play hide and go seek with them. And you have this really cool environment where you've got this family dynamic and this bigger than you situation that I think is really important for young athletes to see, specifically young boys, young girls. Like seeing that whole situation unfold is an amazing opportunity for them to build some life skills. You see a young parent parenting their children. They get to be involved. It's almost like, it's not babysitting, but it's just building some form of a relationship and understanding like kind of how do I deal with this little tiny human over here that thinks I'm the coolest thing in the world, while also, going through and focusing on what I want to focus on, which is volleyball and a club volleyball tournament. So there's these things that we want to try and incentivize. There's these things that we want to make sure we are providing space for parents, athletes, and the kids to be able to all be a part of. So the call to action that I have for you guys is, obviously we've been making a fuss about this, right? Quote unquote fuss. We believe that it should be changed. I think there's a good amount of support for it. The thing that we need help with is figuring out who to contact. We have USA Volleyball CEO. We know John Spurall, right? We have the people who we believe can help move the needle. But obviously, when it comes down to it, we need official support. We need the person who's in charge of actually changing rules to be in agreement. You've got the USA Volleyball Board of Regents. You've got the people who vote on these things at the annual meetings that we need to find ways to get this in front of them, right? There needs to be a solution on the insurance side. How does the insurance company handle this? How does, the registration system handle this? There's a lot more details that go into it that obviously we, can't really foresee and don't truly understand, but know that if we're pushing in the right direction and we're making sure it's clear that this is something that we believe in, something that is important, that we want to empower specifically female coaches to get involved with the sport, then it's a good thing for us to do. So if you know of anyone that would be able to fit into that category of who can help move the needle forward on this, drop a comment. Let me know. I want to continue to push this forward. I don't want this just to be, we post a video every 2 weeks and we just kind of are shouting into the abyss. We want there to actually be some action behind the words so that we're making a positive push forward, specifically in a year when you just had the first female coach win a national championship, right? You've got, 2-3 women's pro volleyball leagues getting started in the United States. We're going to have the Olympics in LA in 4 years. There's a lot of positive momentum for volleyball in our nation. And we want to be setting ourselves up in a way that we're empowering not just the current athletes and the current coaches, but also the next generation that's going to be seeing this for the next 4 years and then jumping on to the volleyball bandwagon moving forward. So let me know. If you have any thoughts, if you have any people that you know of, drop them in the comment for me. Let me know. And once again, thank you for subscribing. If this is something you think would be helpful for anyone else, please share, like, subscribe, all of the cliche things that YouTubers say at the end of videos.